Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Gimmal education session for Thursday, December 11th. Uh, excuse me. Gimmal, these education sessions are here so we can help you explore ways to enhance your expertise with your Gimmal software. Next slide, Tim, please. Thank you, sir. My name is Marcia Shields, and I'm from our customer success team. I'll be your host, and joining us today is Tim Butler, sales engineer, who's going to be your subject matter expert. We're happy to have you with us, whether you're joining us live or watching this recording later. Today's session, Tim will be reviewing in Gimmal Physical tab filters. And just to clarify, we apologize for the reminder email from Zoom. If you think this session is about legal holds, it is not. That happened in October, but I will share the recording for that shortly. Today is about tab filters, so we're happy to have you with us. Today we're going to be about 30 minutes for this session, including time at the end for your questions. Any questions you have, please submit them in the Q&A area at the bottom of your Zoom bar. I'll be collecting those and we'll tee those up for Tim after his demonstration. As you probably heard, the session is being recorded and will be shared after the event via email, and we'll also post it to our Gimmal YouTube channel. And yes, congratulations to our newest All-Stars, Mike A., Frederick D., Will S., and Carmen C. Since we last met, all these folks have earned at least 3,000 points to get their coveted Gimmal All-Star badge. Great job, and we really appreciate everybody participating for this year. I think in total, if I recall, we have about 25 to 30 All-Stars, so that really shows the depth that everybody is taking to join these sessions and learn more about the product. So thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to start this off with a quick poll question that we would love your input in before Tim gets started. Today's question is, how many users log into your version of Gimmal Physical? Really curious to see what these answers are. It could be 1 or less than 10, less than 100, greater than 100. So we'll give this just a few seconds for people to participate. All right. Glad to see there's not a 1 in the answer so far. Give it another. Oh, it's there. Less than 10 is winning, Tim, just so you know. And I'll share this in a minute, almost. Okay, share the results. So the winner for how many users log into the version of Gimmal Physical, 67% said less than 10. So hope that helps for today's conversation, Tim. And that's it for me. I'm going to hand things off to you.
Hey, thanks, Marcia. Appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, again, for joining us here today. We're going to spend just a few minutes together looking at the topic of tab filters. And to set the context there, guys, what we're really focusing on here is a component of the overall security model within Gimmal Physical, and probably a refresher for most of you. But in case it's not, the security model in Gimmal Physical is primarily role-based. There are a couple exceptions where you can set things at the user level. You can have as many roles as you want. Usually those roles are integrated with your Active Directory repository. But in the end, guys, regardless of how many roles you have, there's basically 2 things you do in terms of configuration for each role. The first thing that's done is that you set up data restriction. And apologies for speaking technical for just a moment here, but when you set up data restriction or hiding data from end users, you can do that at 3 levels. You can do it at what's known as table, row, or column level. We're not going to look at table or column today. We're going to focus on row level security, or sometimes it's called record level security. And I think most people are aware of this, but I'm going to cover it anyway. Please be aware there are actually 3 different ways to configure row level security. Tab filters happens to be just one of them. The other 2 are known as secured lists, and then the last one is a specialized control on the users tab. So I'm just going to quickly show you that and dismiss that so we can focus on tab filters, but they all kind of go together if you want to implement row or record level security. So here I've jumped to the users tab in my application. I'm going to focus on just one user here, that's Sarah H. And I think most of you are familiar with this. On your users tab is a control, usually captioned as organizations. You could have captioned it something else. But the important thing to note here is that what we're doing for this particular user, Sarah Holsgrove, when she logs in, because she has been associated to the organization known as Alpha Core Administration Central Records, there's actually a lot more organizational units in this application, but she's only associated to this one. What that then does for Sarah when she logs in, when she goes to any other tab that has organizational information, like the organizations tab or the record schedules tab, or usually the boxes and/or files tab, it then will restrict her to records that are associated to the same org that she is associated with here. So it's one example of row level security that everybody has. I can't remember over the last 2 decades where we've deployed an application that did not have this control on the users tab. Example number one. Example number two, which again, we're just going to briefly mention here today when it comes to row level security, and really a topic for another webinar. There's actually some information about this in our tutorials out on the website there that you can look at your leisure should you so desire. But there's this construct known as a secured list. Again, not going to cover it in detail, but please be aware there is this thing called a secured list that can be configured onto various tabs of your application. This one quick example on the boxes tab, there's a drop-down list known as box status. It has these values in the list, and then you can turn on or off every one of these functions based upon the values in this list. One really nice thing here about a secured list is, like I said up front, the security model on the whole in Gimmal Physical is role-based. This construct, you set it role by role, but one nice thing about secured lists is you can also then add additional rights at the user level. So it is primarily role-based, and it is row or record based in terms of restriction, but it has the nice additional feature that back on the users tab, for each individual user, you could add additional rights that may not be set here. So with those kind of dismissed and out of the way, let's focus on the topic at hand here today, what's known as tab filters. To do that, we're going to click on the gear and we're going to jump to the admin page. Going to scroll down just a tad here and click on tab filters. Now, guys, every one of your systems, if you've purchased Infolinks and or Gimmal Physical in the last 15 or so years, you're going to see in your application, it's already prepackaged with a number of tab filters, specifically all these ones that begin with the words hide deleted. In other words, we know that often what you want to do as a records manager, regardless of which tab in the application you're talking about, if records on that tab have been deleted, you don't need end users seeing that data. It's really only for the administrators or the records managers that would still need to see that. So generally speaking, what you would see, you're going to have all these tab filters already created, these hide deleted ones. You would see these filters then applied to the roles. Let me give you one quick example of that. Let's jump back to admin. Let's go to roles and permissions and focus on this role called general in my demo application here. If I go to the edit page, you'll notice for people in this role, the general role, notice how all of those tab filters that begin with hide deleted are checked. Because again, for your average end user, your general user, they don't care about deleted records. You don't want them seeing those records. So please be aware there's pre-packaged tab filters already in the system. What we want to do today, beyond those though, is just focus a little further down the road what you can do otherwise with the tab filters themselves. To that end, guys, I'm going to draw your attention to the two that you see here. Again, in my demo application, I've got one here called Canadian Schedules Only and another called German Boxes Only. Let's begin to pull back the covers here and take a look at what this really means. I'm going to go ahead and click on the edit link for Canadian Schedules. So this is something I configured ahead of time. If we have enough time today at the end, I'll configure a brand new tab filter so you can see it from point A to point Z how this works. But seeing what has already happened here, I previously I clicked on this create a new filter button, and I began to fill this page out. The first thing you do when you create a tab filter is choose the tab. That's why they're called tab filters. They are related specifically to individual tabs in the application. In this case, I picked record schedule. I gave it whatever name I wanted, call it whatever you like. But here's the really important stuff. I said, hey, I want to create a tab filter where this field called jurisdiction on the record schedule tab is equal to Canada. And I kept this one very simple. You can actually build the tab filters and make them very complex should you so desire. But in this case, all we're saying is when jurisdiction equals Canada, I want to use that logic as a filter. For those who are technical amongst us, it does show you what's known as the underlying SQL, if you care to know that. But if you're like, man, Tim, I don't know what all that means, no problem. Simply click on that preview button, and it tells you, okay, this tab filter you're creating right now, it only affects a single record on the record schedule tab. So be aware of that. While we're here, let's go ahead and look at the boxes one as well. We're going to kind of try to tie all this together. So a second filter was created on the boxes tab that I called German boxes only. And again, using a similar field called jurisdiction on the boxes tab. This time I said where jurisdiction equals Germany. Same technical SQL. You click the preview here. We're going to see it says, hey, there's actually 26 records currently on the boxes tab where indeed the jurisdiction equals Germany. So you kind of have an idea of how powerful this filter might be. Really important point to mention here, though, guys, when you create a tab filter, congratulations, but in reality, you really haven't done anything yet. It's just kind of sitting there in a queue. What you then have to do, it is kind of the two-step, as you saw a few moments ago, after you create your tab filters, you then have to come into the roles and permissions. So I'm going to focus your attention on these two roles here, the Administrators Canada and Administrators Germany. As you would suspect, if we take a look at Administrators Canada, in addition to all the other rights, I've also now applied that tab filter. So again, just creating the tab filter does nothing. You have to take the created filter and then associate it or apply it to the desired roles. So for this role, we've applied the Canadian schedules only to this role. We come back here and look at the Administrators Germany. What you would guess here, right? Same basic idea, just a different filter where we're saying German boxes only. Now, guys, I'm going to ask you to kind of keep a couple things in your head here. I'm going to try to connect all these dots as I mentioned earlier. I am right now logged in as an administrator, not a Canadian or German or anything like that, kind of a super user. I can see everything. And I want to call out a couple things and ask you to keep this in the back of your mind. So if we start here on the boxes tab and I run a query, just for now, just take note, 1,550 boxes that I can query up. If I do the files tab here, what I want you to take note of here, who knows how many files I have? I got 200 and some files, but where I want to draw your attention is on this control. Most of these files are sitting in boxes, and you're seeing that designation over here in the current location. And then finally, the last thing I want to ask you to kind of keep in your mind on the record schedules tab now, you'll notice I've got 28 different record schedules when I'm logged in as Mr. Super User here. So kind of keep all that tucked away. Let's log out, though, and come in as some users under those other two roles that we mentioned. So let's go ahead and start with Justin here. Log in as Mr. Trudeau into our application here, who is in that Administrators Canada role with that tab filter applied. So if we start over here on the record schedule tab, I want you to notice when I query here as logged in as Justin, I only get one schedule that even shows up because you're seeing the result of the tab filter. As we saw just a moment ago, logged in as super user, there were 20 some schedules, but of those 20 some, only one of them actually has the jurisdiction set to Canada. So this is a pretty extreme example of tab filtering or row level security. We know there's 20 some records on this tab, but Justin can only see one of them based upon that tab filter. Really important subtle point here to make though, guys. In addition to what you're seeing here, again, still logged in as Justin, let's go to the boxes tab now and let's create or begin to create a new box. And I'm going to go ahead and choose an organizational unit here. I'm going to grab this administration, information technology, and here's where I want to draw your attention. Notice that for Justin, because that tab filter that was applied to the record schedule tab, it also comes into purview here as well. There's actually more, and if we have time, I'll log back out and come back in as super user to show you there's about a half dozen schedules that are logic or record series that are logical children of this selected organization. But because of that tab filter, it not only affects what Justin sees on the record schedule tab, it actually also affects what he sees on other tabs that reference that same set of data. So please be aware of that. There's kind of this inheritance functionality within the application. When you create a tab filter, you are associating it to a tab, but that tab's data can appear on multiple other tabs in the application. So kind of a twofold effect there with the tab filter based upon the particular details. Let's log out as Justin now and come back in as someone in that German role. And I've got a user here, Hans. Let's log in as Hans Wagner. Same sort of basic idea here, but for Hans, let's go first of all to boxes for Hans. And notice even if I clear and I do the search, unlike super user who could see 1,550 boxes, Hans here can only see 26 boxes because he has the tab filter applied for the boxes tab. Only show him those where the jurisdiction is Germany. And sure enough, if you scroll all the way through this, you'll see they all say Germany. In similar fashion, however, if we now jump over to the Files tab logged in as Hans, I want you to take note of this column I asked you to just kind of keep in the back of your mind earlier when we were logged in as super user. Remember how it said all these files were in various boxes? Well, super user was not restricted, but Hans here is. Remember, Hans is now set up via that tab filter to only see boxes where the jurisdiction is Germany. So these files, he can see the files, but that particular piece of metadata, the current location, which for all the ones you see on the screen right now, resolves to a box. And guess what? Those boxes are not German boxes. So same basic principle here. You configured the tab filter over at the box level, but it does take effect other places where we reference back to the box level data. So please be aware that pretty straightforward, guys, when you're configuring a tab filter, you do it per tab consisting of whatever logic you want. And then really important, right? You apply the created tab filter to one or more roles, keeping in mind when you apply it, it's certainly going to affect the tab for which it was configured, but it will often also affect data as displayed on other tabs. Now, let's actually just walk through the exercise of creating one of these, and I'm going to get out of here as Hans. Let me come back in as super user. Where are you? There you are, super user. Let's log in, and let's just pick an example. Pretty common one, I think, actually. I'm going to jump over to the legal holds tab. So in my demo app in the legal holds tab, I've only got 5 different legal holds, and I want to draw your attention here, guys, to the hold type. You can see I have various types of holds that are defined here. It may be a little bit arbitrary or fictitious, but let's create a tab filter along the lines of, hey, for certain people or certain roles, I only want people to see the holds that are legal in nature. I don't want them seeing historical or executive or any of the other varieties. With that in mind, let's jump back in and at least walk through one example of creating a tab filter from scratch. So we'll go to tab filters. You see a list of everything that's already been created. If you want to create a new one, simply click on the add filter. In this case, as is always, choose what tab we're talking about. In my case, legal hold. I'm going to call this thing legal only. And here's the really important stuff. On that tab, the legal holds tab, is a drop-down list called hold type. I'm going to use my control here to say, hey, you know what? I only want to do this where it equals legal. I can come down here and say, okay, is this really what I want to do? I can click the preview button, get the SQL, and it says, yep, there's one record, and that matches what I just saw on the legal hold tab. There's only one of these guys out there. I'm going to save this filter that I've called legal only. Remember, guys, what I've just done here, kind of nice. I've introduced some logic into the application, but I still really haven't done anything, right? Because what I now need to do after creating the tab filter is to come back in, pick one or more roles, and I'm just going to grab one of these roles here. We'll grab the Administrators Canada. I then have to apply that filter that I just created. And well, I forgot how many filters I actually have here. So let's go to page 2. And here's that filter. So if I wanted people in this particular role to only see legal holds data where the hold type was equal to legal, I would click that button, I would save it, and I've thus applied this functionality, this logic, this record restricting logic known as tab filter to people in this role. So that's it, guys. That's how tab filters work. Pretty straightforward. You're aware now of some of the consequences of applying the tab filters, not only on the native tab, but on additional tabs as well. And with that, I'm going to kick it back to Marcia. We're going to answer any questions that may have come up. So Marcia, help me out.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Tim, I don't know if you can see the actual chat. Andrea had
I
posted.
can.
Yeah, it might be, there's a longer one. I could read it too.
All right, Andrew says, hey, look at that. Looking at that tab filter, you've got a row with an open parent, the filter, then a row for a closed parent. Is that required? No, great question, Andrew. It's not required. It's something that we actually do for you. If we were to go back and look at the one we just created, in fact, let's do that. Let's go back into admin. Let's look at tab filters. Let's go find that legal hold one right here and go to the edit page. We actually supplied these parentheses for you. It's a way to nest logic. And the reason we do that, I won't get into all the details. It gets a little algebra 2-like complicated, if you will. But using parentheses, you can do what's called nesting your logic. This control that you see here, guys, for the tab filters, a lot of you are familiar with the similar control over on the advanced query page, or also when you're running reports, you can create advanced filters over there. They all utilize the same control. And guys, you can build some really complex logic via the use of the control itself. But if you want to ramp it up yet another level, you can nest the logic via the parentheses. So sorry, Andrew, long-winded question to no, they're not required. We supply them for you. But if you supply them explicitly yourself, we'll accept what you have put in.
Okay.
And can you go over again how you activate the tab filter? Yeah, let's just jump back over there one more time. Go back to admin. Row by row now. So we've created a tab filter. In our case, it was legal only. Let's grab the general role this time. Let's click on the edit to say, hey, I want to change something about this role. Here's my list of all existing tab filters, and I've got so many. We're going to go to page 2 to find the one I just created. And here it is right here. So if I want to now activate it or apply it, I simply check the filter that was created, making sure that I click the save button. It is now, quote, activated.
Thanks, Tim. That's great. Couple questions on the Q&A side. The first one is, which is preferred, tab filters or secured lists?
Yeah, interesting question, guys. There is no preference, but let's just talk about the nuances here for a moment. As I think I mentioned up front, forgive me if I did not, tab filters are applied at the row level and only at the row level. So a tab filter would be preferred if that's fine with you. No matter how many people you have in a given role, if you want this restriction to apply to all of them, that's an argument to use a tab filter. Probably the best argument. It's also, guys, a little simpler concept. So just to reduce the complexity of the application, I would put it this way: use tab filters whenever you can, because they're basically an all or nothing approach for a role. You're really restricting whether or not they can view data based upon that. Now, with the secured list, you could actually set up a secured list. So let's bring a secured list up here. Let's jump to the security model and jump into one of these roles here and grab a secured list. Guys, if you were to do something like this, and I won't take the time to uncheck it, I'll just explain it. But if you were to uncheck every single thing you do here, well, actually, let's go ahead and do it. If I was to do this and then do this, what I'm doing right here winds up having the same effect. Actually, set it backwards. If I do it this way and then uncheck the view, if I do this right here, what I'm saying is people in this role, when it comes to the boxes tab, based upon the box status list, because I've disabled the ability to view records when the value or any of these values, by doing that, there's no chance they'll ever get to do any of these other actions. So, in theory, at least, you could use a secured list in the same way that you do the tab filter. You don't do that though. This is, a more complex control. The more typical scenario is you check all the view rights, then you check or uncheck based upon each action. So that's a significant difference. The other big difference, and I do want to show you this as well, unlike the tab filters, where they are applied at the role in the role level only, if we come back to Sarah here, similar, where you can have some user level security based upon that organizational control, where you specify one or more orgs for each individual user. When it comes to a secured list, guys, you can then take whatever you set at the role level for the secured list. You can then come user by user. And if I scroll down here at the bottom, you can actually add additional rights. So another way to say all that is if you want to apply some row level restriction and you want to kind of keep it convenient, so you want to start at the row level, but you're going to have some exceptions, particular individuals within that role where you want to grant them additional rights. That's the argument for the secured list. So it just depends on the situation, the business process. One other point I'll make here, guys, please be aware that secured lists, because of the nature of their architecture, they're number one, they take a little more work to maintain and manage. But then number two, they can slow your system down, not a lot, but a little bit. But if you really begin to multiply these secured lists in that you have a lot of them, you will eventually see the system slow down. Tab filters, not quite the same, much less burden on the application to manage the logic within. So is there a preference either way? It just depends on the situation at hand.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jen. That's great. One other question, which might be an easier answer. Is there any limit to the number of tab filters?
No, you can create as many tab filters as you want, and you can apply as many filters as you want to each role. Eventually, though, guys, similar to secured lists, if you create all kinds of tab filters and you apply a whole bunch of them to a particular role, and especially to a given tab, because you could have more than one tab filter per tab, eventually you will see the system slow down. So, unless you really need to, don't do that.
Okay. All right, Tim, you're off the hot seat. Thank you so much for that. So let's just wrap up. This does bring us to the end of today's session. Thank you all for joining us again. We really appreciate it. Coming soon is our Q1 series. We have those out, or we have those carved out, and messages for this should be going out in the next week or two. So keep an eye on your inbox. As always, we'll send a reminder the week before each session, so you have 2 times to register. But if you have any suggestions for 2026 for sessions like these, please send those my way. I'd be happy to get them into the plan. For everybody on this call, have a great holiday if we don't speak to you before then. And thanks again for joining us. Take care.